Welcome back to the program. Chris Mannix of Yahoo Sports NBA senior reporter. How you doing, Chris?
What's happening, Rich?
You tell me. We're going to have tonight, we're going to have the coach of the year accepting the trophy for his former team, right? Is that what we're going to see tonight, you think?
Yeah, I think Dwayne Casey is a pretty strong lock, just like I think James Harden for MVP is a pretty strong lock.
If you could choose to give out the award based on April and May and June play, who would be the MVP choice for you, Chris?
Oh, I think it has to be LeBron. You know, that postseason was one of his best. You know, and look, I voted for Harden and I was comfortable with it. It was just LeBron during the regular season was just too indifferent defensively a lot, but the way he strapped that team on his back for, you know, the toughest Eastern Conference playoffs he's had in a long time, I would give it to him if we factored that in.
Where does his free agency stance stand right now, Chris? Walk me through it.
It's hard to get any kind of read on it, and it's hard to even guess. I mean, you're just kind of reading tea leaves sort of at this point. And, you know, what you can do is look at everybody else's. That's kind of the best way to look at LeBron's free agency, because he always goes to a place that has as good or better a chance to win a championship as the place he's leaving. You know, that's been the history of LeBron James. And, you know, Kawhi, I don't think Kawhi gets dealt anywhere, whether it's the Eastern Conference, the Lakers. I mean, there's a lot of smoke screens out there right now. I mean, now the latest is kind of Kawhi's not going to be traded out west. You know, people that have dealt with the Spurs have often told me that they're not really all that concerned with where Kawhi goes. They're concerned with the best return that they can get back. So I'm a little skeptical of the idea that the Spurs are just ruling out half the league in the talks about Kawhi Leonard. But wherever they decide to move him to ultimately, it's not going to be an accelerated process. I mean, we saw Kyrie Irving dealt in late August last year. It wouldn't surprise me at all if it played out that way with Kawhi Leonard. The same thing with Paul George. I mean, his decision will happen a lot faster, but you know, I've been saying for weeks, if not months, really since the Oklahoma City season ended, you know, they have a quiet confidence in Oklahoma City that Paul George thoroughly enjoyed his season there. And, you know, if you talk to people around him, you talk to people that know Russell Westbrook, the relationship between Russ and Paul George is really strong. You know, they've spent time in the L.A. area working out together this summer. I don't discount the strong possibility that Paul George, on some kind of deal, maybe it's not a full 5-year max, but on some kind of deal, goes back to Oklahoma City for another season.
So then let's hit the LeBron part first of what you just said. Chris Mannix of Yahoo Sports joining us here. Is there even a Dumb and Dumber chance of LeBron telling the Cavs, pick up my option, I'm staying put for 1 year?
I only think they tell him that, or he tells them that, if he has something in place where he'd be traded there. I don't think he's, you know, look, he can get the same amount of money, if not more. I'm not, you know, all that versed in the salary cap gymnastics that teams are doing nowadays to clear cap space, but he'd get as much money, if not more, just going back to the Cavs. So the only reason to opt into his contract is because whether it's Houston or somebody else, he's figured out a way to get to that place without, you know, basically gutting that team of everything they have.
So that would require him, I mean, is it tampering if he's the one calling other teams, Chris?
No, I mean, like one thing the NBA just basically, I mean, I don't know when they decided this, but it probably around 2008 when, you know, guys really started palling around these Olympic teams. You know, they decided there's no such thing as player tampering. You know, owners can't talk. You know, they get tough on, you know, executives talking to agents ahead of time. You know, they don't want to hear about pre-set up meetings.
Or Magic talking to Kimmel, you know, dropping a joke to Kimmel.
Even like, you know, that reported meeting with the Lakers, you know, talking to their staff about tampering. From what I was told, it was like a meeting of the staff, but everybody was kind of talking to Magic Johnson, you know, basically saying, you know, don't, you know, go rogue at all, you know, during this process because we've already got burned once on this. So, you know, that kind of stuff, the NBA is as tight as they can be on, but players doing stuff, you know, they're just not going to police that.
So LeBron is the one who's calling Daryl Morey to figure this out, or he calls Chris Paul to figure out, like, whether
I'm sure it's. I don't think LeBron's calling Daryl Morey, but I think that it's player on player, and you know, LeBron reaching out to Paul George, LeBron talking to Chris Paul. these conversations have to be happening, by now. They happen all the time amongst players. Maybe DeMarcus Cousins is looped in on these, text chains or whatever they are. But there's always a story behind how the kind of sausage gets made out here. And part of that story is always guys talking to each other. So, maybe it's him talking to Chris Paul to relays it to, Daryl Morey. I mean, there's stuff that goes on behind the scenes that gets this kind of thing done.
Chris Mannix of Yahoo joining me here. What do you make of the report that LeBron says, "Don't PowerPoint me, bro"? Like I don't need that when it's all up and running for the free agency period.
The being wooed part of it is really for first time free agents and first time free agents on the level of LeBron James. When we saw Kevin Durant do it. I mean, Kevin Durant was really a first time free agent when he invited all those people out to the Hamptons. LeBron did it his first time around when everybody came out to sell him. Once you go through that, I mean, even Carmelo spoke about this back in, 2011 or 12 when he signed that deal. He's like, I never want to go through that again. It's an exhaustive process. It's an emotional process. It's not fun. I mean, guys want to do it because, at the end of their contract, they're 27, 28 years old. They want teams out there drooling over them. But once they get through it, they don't want to do it again. LeBron significantly scaled it back the last time he was a free agent. Now it's going to be non-existent.
All right. So how do you see it? What's your best guess in how it plays out? Is it quick? Is it long? Does he draw it out? What do you think?
You got to go off history, Rich. And I think the first time around, it was like July 12th. The second time around, it was July 8th. It was like an average of like 9.5 days of drawn-out stuff. I would imagine the same thing takes place. I mean, he's got to, unless he has that deal on the table, which I'm skeptical of. I think he signed somewhere as a free agent. Unless he has that deal on the table, I think we're looking at the same timetable, 9th or 10th or 11th.
All right, and Kawhi doesn't figure into this thing because, I mean, based on what you heard draft night, Buford basically coming out and saying, our intention is to have him here and be part of the family. We love him. Has none of that affected anything on this front with Kawhi?
From what I've been told, they're trying to have it both ways right now. They're talking to Kawhi. They're telling Kawhi they want to be there. And when teams call, and I mean, literally every team in the league has called to either express interest with an offer or just register their interest. They're telling teams, look, we're not going to trade him, but if you want to make us an offer, we'll throw it on the pile here and we'll consider it. They're not promising to counter at this point. They're just saying, make us a good offer and we'll do it. I had one GM that described to me the Spurs process for this as kind of a blind auction. And that's why it's going to be drawn out. I mean, when they ultimately do decide to make a deal on this, and, I just don't think it's salvageable, with Kawhi saying, I'll accept a long-term deal with San Antonio. So when they decide to take a trade offer on this, they're going to play one team against the other. I mean, I really believe that a Kawhi Leonard trade, whenever it happens, if it happens, is going to be on the same timetable as a Kyrie Irving one.
So August, not trade deadline, like later on in the season. Later on the summer.
I'm fully imagining, Rich, like I had last year with, the 1 week of vacation I take every year.
Nice.
Being drunk on a beach and getting a phone call that a big player got traded. Just like last.
Yeah, but Kawhi had, Kyrie had 2 years left on his deal, and a lot of people still think that he should be in Cleveland still because of the amount of time left on the contract. It's not different because there's 1 year left on Kawhi's deal?
Well, it's no. The short answer is no, it's not different. The Spurs, the way they look at it, their only deadline is the trade deadline. They still believe that Kawhi will have significant value leading up to that trade deadline. Now, there's a reasonable argument to be made that, Kawhi's value will diminish once the season starts. You obviously want to get in your training camp, working with your team, and equally as important, selling him on the future of the organization. If you wait until February, the number of teams you can practically deal with goes down pretty significantly. So, but the Spurs, they look at that February date as being their real deadline. So I don't think they have any problem dragging this thing out if the offers aren't really appealing to them.
So I guess last one for you there, Chris. You have LeBron popping right around the first, if not second week, after the first week of July, and Kawhi Leonard, where that is, the Lakers How do you think they look by the end of July? Do they have their max players? Do they have a completely retooled team, Chris?
You know, it's a great question, and I don't know. I mean, this is as unpredictable a free agency as I've ever covered, because even though the Miami stuff back in 2010 didn't really make any sense, once we realized that Bosch was in on it and all the pieces that were in play, it did make a little sense. Cleveland always made sense because it was Northeast Ohio, and there were pieces because of all those number one draft picks that they've had to make a deal. The Lakers, unless Paul George commits, I mean, that's the big domino. Paul George makes the decision, is going to be the first guy to fall. Maybe it's simultaneously with LeBron if it's the Lakers, but if Paul George decides he wants to go back to Oklahoma City, I don't know where LeBron James goes that he can look at and say, that's a team that I can win a championship with.
Ask the question of Chris as he goes out the door here, Chris.
Yeah, Chris, looking at the Rookie of the Year nominees, Ben Simmons, Donovan Mitchell, Jason Tatum, which of these guys would you build your franchise around?
I would probably pick Jason Tatum at this point, because I think Jason Tatum, there's only a handful of guys in this league that have average 30 points a game. I think Jason Tatum can average 30 points a game in this league. He's that good offensively. Mitchell is a Dwayne Wade type, but maybe not there. Simmons has got to show me. I mean, we're talking about Simmons, guys, that maybe he should switch shooting hands next year. You've got to get past that before I, take Simmons over Tatum long term.
Chris, enjoy the NBA awards tonight. Are you going to be live tweeting it? What do you got for me?
No, I've got so many better things to do. I don't want to do that. No, I don't care. I voted. I'm done, Rich.
All right, you're done. Chris, thanks for the time. Appreciate it.
You got it, Rich.
You got it. At Chris Mannix, YS for Yahoo Sports.
The Rich Eisen Show, weekdays at noon Eastern on Audience.